School funding in Indiana is a complex system that affects every student, teacher, and taxpayer in the state. Public school districts are funded by three main sources of revenue: state funds, local property taxes, and federal grants. State funding is the largest source of support for schools, accounting for about 60% of a district's total revenue. The more students a district serves, the more state funding it receives. But if a student leaves, the funding follows the student to their new school. Beyond the base funding for each student, Indiana provides additional support to help schools serve students who face greater challenges, including students with special needs and students from low-income families. Local funding, mostly from property taxes, accounts for about 31% of a school district's revenue. It's the second largest source of school funding. But Indiana law limits how much property tax can be collected. When those limits kick in, schools receive less money than planned, no matter what students' needs may be. At that point, districts are faced with a tough choice: cut programs and services, or ask their community to approve a referendum for additional funding. Federal funding is the smallest overall source for school funding in Indiana, making up an average of 9% of a school district's funding. State law requires schools to divide their funding into specific buckets. Each bucket can only be used for certain types of expenses. Because of this system, school districts may have funds available to replace buses or update facilities, but not enough to increase teacher salaries. In the next section, we'll break down what each of these funding buckets is designed to support. Let's start with the Education Fund. This is the largest fund in a school district's budget. It's funded by the state of Indiana and by law can only be used for expenses directly related to classroom instruction. These dollars primarily pay for teacher salaries and benefits, instructional aids, and other direct classroom expenses. In most districts, the vast majority of Education Fund dollars go toward the people who work directly with students every day. In short, this fund is dedicated to teaching and learning. But schools are more than just classrooms. Schools provide safe buildings for students. Buses need fuel and regular maintenance. The cost to heat, cool, and power our schools continues to rise. The supplies needed for day-to-day operations and the cost of insurance have also increased. That's where the Operations Fund comes in. While the Education Fund supports instruction, the Operations Fund keeps the schools running. And unlike the Education Fund, which is supported by the state, the Operations Fund relies primarily on local property taxes. Now let's talk about the third bucket, the Debt Service Fund. Think of this fund like a mortgage payment for a school district. When a school needs something major, like building a new school, renovating an older building, improving an athletic facility, or replacing aging HVAC equipment, it usually can't pay for it all at once. Instead, the district borrows the money. This is often done by issuing bonds. The Debt Service Fund is the account used to make those payments over time, both the principal and the interest, just like making payments on a home loan. Importantly, Debt Service Fund dollars can only be used to make debt payments. Schools are not allowed to use this money for teacher salaries, classroom supplies, or other operating expenses. And just like the Operations Fund, the money for the Debt Service Fund comes primarily from local property taxes. The last bucket works a little differently. It's called the Referendum Fund, and not every school district has one. Sometimes a district needs funding beyond what the state and existing local taxes provide. When that happens, the district can ask the community for approval through a referendum. A referendum is simply a question placed on the ballot. Voters decide yes or no on whether to allow the district to collect additional property tax revenue for a specific purpose. If a majority of voters approve the question, the district may collect that additional funding for a set number of years. There are three main types of school referendums. Operating referendums support day-to-day expenses, such as teacher salaries, academic programs, and classroom supplies. Capital referendums pay for building projects and facility improvements. And safety referendums fund security upgrades and other measures designed to keep students and staff safe. In short, a referendum gives the community the final say on whether to provide schools with funding beyond their standard revenue sources. School funding in Indiana is governed by state law, and each fund comes with specific rules about how dollars can be used. That means even if the education fund has a surplus, schools can't simply redirect all of those dollars to pay for building repairs, transportation costs, or other operational needs. State law limits how much money can be transferred between funds and prescribes how most education dollars must be used. At the same time, the Operations Fund faces limits on how much schools can collect from property taxes, even as costs for transportation, utilities, and maintenance continue to rise. Because these funds are connected, pressure in one area affects the entire system. Rising transportation costs can reduce the dollars available for building repairs. Property tax caps can force difficult choices between updating classroom technology and maintaining school facilities. School districts work every day to balance these competing priorities, meeting today's needs while planning responsibly for the future, all within the limits set by the state.